In combat sports, legends are born in blood, glory, and the roar of the crowd. But what happens when the cage door finally closes, the lights fade, and the body begins to betray the warrior spirit? Some of MMA's most iconic names, fighters who once seemed invincible, are now facing battles far darker than anything inside the octagon. From declining health to legal struggles, from fading legacies to haunting signs of brain damage, the aftermath is as brutal as the wars they once fought. Today, we uncover the tragic realities of Chuck Liddell, Nate Diaz, Ronda Rousey, and more. Chuck Liddell, from the Iceman to shadows of CTE, Chuck, the Iceman. Liddell was more than a fighter. He was a myth in motion. With his iron chin, devastating right hand, and cold stare, he turned the early 2000s into his personal kingdom. He wasn't just winning fights, he was knocking out legends and carrying the UFC into mainstream popularity. Fans didn't just watch him, they worshipped him. But time is undefeated. After 2007, the cracks began to show. Quinton "Rampage" Jackson knocked him out cold, and suddenly the invincible aura was gone. What followed was a brutal stretch, Rashad Evans, Rich Franklin, and others all leaving him unconscious on the canvas. These weren't minor losses. They were frightening shutdowns of a man's nervous system. Despite Dana White's pleas to retire, Liddell made a comeback in 2018 against Tito Ortiz. Nearly 50 years old, he stepped back into the cage, and fans knew instantly it was wrong. He was slow, stiff, and far from the warrior he once was. Ortiz finished him in the first round with a simple punch, and the MMA world recoiled in horror. It wasn't nostalgia anymore. It was elder abuse. The aftermath was even darker. Liddell's speech slowed, his memory faltered, and whispers of CTE grew louder. His ex-wife even alleged in court documents that he was showing signs of dementia. Once the face of the UFC, Chuck Liddell has tragically become a case study in what unchecked head trauma can do to a legend. Nate Diaz, the Stockton Warrior, unraveling. If Liddell was the UFC's wrecking ball, Nate Diaz was its street king. He bled, fought, and taunted his way into legend status, never backing down, never faking it. Fans adored him because he was raw, real, and defiant, the anti-hero of MMA. His upset victory over Conor McGregor cemented him as an icon. But his style came at a brutal cost. Diaz's chin became his trademark, but every punch he absorbed was another strike against his future health. Doctors call it repetitive head trauma. Fans called it heart. Over 30 wars in the cage, countless strikes absorbed, and a refusal to quit left his body and mind fraying. In recent years, the warning signs are impossible to ignore. His speech is slower, words slurred, thoughts repeated. Once brushed off as his Stockton swagger, fans now fear it's something far worse: early CTE. His infamous street fight arrest in 2023 only deepened the concern. Nate seemed unable to separate the cage from real life, choking out a man unconscious on the street. Even after leaving the UFC, Diaz kept fighting, stepping into a boxing ring with Jake Paul. At 38, slower and stiffer, he absorbed over 100 clean shots across 10 rounds. Fans didn't cheer. They worried. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was watching a warrior crumble in real time. Today, Diaz drifts in and out of the spotlight, paranoid, isolated, and still talking about future fights. But his legacy feels more fragile than ever. Once celebrated as the sports rebel, Nate Diaz is now becoming a warning sign. A man fighting battles his body and mind may no longer be able to survive. Ronda Rousey, the rise, the fall, the retreat. Ronda Rousey wasn't just a fighter. She was a revolution. From Olympic judo to UFC dominance, She forced Dana White to create a women's division he once swore would never exist. Her arm bars became legendary. Her fights were over in seconds. She was a global icon, starring in Hollywood films, on magazine covers, even headlining WrestleMania. For a moment, Ronda was untouchable, but pressure breaks even the strongest. At UFC 193, Holly Holm's brutal head kick sent Ronda crashing to the canvas, dethroning the Queen in devastating fashion. What followed was silence, depression, and suicidal thoughts she later admitted to. Her comeback fight against Amanda Nunes lasted just 48 seconds. The aura of invincibility was gone, replaced by the haunting reality of defeat. Instead of rebuilding, Rousey vanished. She pivoted to WWE, where success was mixed, at times dominant, at times alienated by fans. Eventually, she left the ring too. Today, she lives away from the spotlight, raising her daughter on a quiet ranch, growing food, tending animals, and building a life far from the chaos. Her story is complicated. She shattered barriers and inspired a generation. But she also showed how crushing fame can destroy even the fiercest warrior. Ronda Rousey remains a pioneer, but one who had to walk away to survive. Alistair Overeem. From monster to memory. Few fighters ever looked as terrifying as Alistair "the Reem" Overeem. Towering, shredded, and armed with devastating knees, he held titles across the globe, from Strikeforce to K1. His demolition of Brock Lesnar in 2011 made him the most feared heavyweight alive. But suspicion followed him. In 2012, he failed a drug test with testosterone levels 14 times the human average. Suddenly, the invincible aura crumbled. His physique shrank, his performances faltered, and the knockouts piled up. Bigfoot Silva, Travis Brown, Ben Rothwell, all left him unconscious in highlight reels. The most brutal came against Francis Ngannou, whose uppercut nearly decapitated him in 2017. That clip still haunts fans today. Overeem fought on into his 40s, chasing one last shot at glory, but the violence had taken its toll. The once sculpted Uberreem is gone, his career fading quietly into obscurity. Once a symbol of evolution in MMA, he is now remembered as a cautionary tale, proof of how quickly dominance can turn into decline. Outro, The Price of Glory, Chuck Liddell, Nate Diaz, Ronda Rousey, Alistair Overeem. Each of them carried MMA into the mainstream. They bled, they broke, and they gave fans unforgettable moments. But the price of that glory is now clearer than ever. Slurred speech, shattered bodies, fading legacies. The cage gave them fame, but it didn't protect them from what came after. This is the brutal truth of combat sports. Fans cheer the knockouts, the wars, the blood. But long after the crowd goes home, fighters live with the consequences, trauma that never leaves, memories that fade, and scars that no doctor can heal. As we look back on these legends, we celebrate what they gave us, but we also confront a sobering reality. In the fight game, the real battle often begins when the lights go out.